Act 4, Scene 1 of No Thoroughfare. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Alan Chant. No Thoroughfare by Charles Dickens and Wilkie Collins. Act 4, Scene 1. The Clock Lock. The pleasant scene was Neuchatel. The pleasant month was April. The pleasant place was a notary's office. The pleasant person in it was the notary, a rosy, hearty, handsome old man, chief notary of Neuchatel, known far and wide in the canton as Maitre Vogt. Professionally and personally, the notary was a popular citizen. His innumerable kindnesses and his innumerable oddities had for years made him one of the recognised public characters of the pleasant Swiss town. His long brown frock coat and his black skull cap were among the institutions of the place, and he carried a snuff box which, in point of size, was popularly believed to be without a parallel in Europe. There was another person in the notary's office, not so pleasant as the notary. This was Obenreizer. An oddly pastoral kind of office it was, and one that would never have answered in England. It stood in a neat back yard, fenced off from a pretty flower garden. Goats browsed in the doorway, and a cow was within 6 feet of keeping company with the clerk. Maitre Vogt's room was a bright and varnished little room, with panelled walls like a toy chamber. According to the seasons of the year, roses, sunflowers, hollyhocks peeped in at the windows. Maitre Vogt's bees hummed through the office all the summer, in at this window and out at that, taking it frequently in their day's work, as if honey were to be made from Maitre Vogt's sweet disposition. A large musical box on the chimney-piece often trilled away to the overture to Fra Diavolo, or a selection from William Tell, with a chirruping liveliness that had to be stopped by force on the entrance of a client, and irrepressibly broke out again the moment his back was turned. "Courage, courage, my good fellow!" said Maitre Vogt, patting Obenreizer on the knee in a fatherly and comforting way. "You will begin a new life to-morrow morning in my office here." Obenreizer, dressed in mourning and subdued in manner, lifted his hand with a white handkerchief in it to the region of his heart. "The gratitude is here," he said, "but the words to express it are not here." "Ta, ta, ta! Don't talk to me about gratitude," said Maitre Vogt. "I hate to see a man oppressed. I see you oppressed, and I hold out my hand to you by instinct. Besides, I am not too old yet to remember my young days. Your father sent me my first client. It was on a question of half an acre of vineyard that seldom bore any grapes. Do I owe nothing to your father's son? I owe him a debt of friendly obligation, and I pay it to you. That's rather neatly expressed, I think," added Maitre Vogt, in high good humour with himself. "Permit me to reward my own merit with a pinch of snuff." Obenreizer dropped his eyes to the ground, as though he were not even worthy to see the notary take snuff. "Do me one last favour, sir," he said, when he raised his eyes. "Do not act on impulse. Thus far you have only a general knowledge of my position. Hear the case for and against me, in its details, before you take me into your office. Let my claim on your benevolence be recognised by your sound reason, as well as by your excellent heart. In that case, I may hold up my head against the bitterest of my enemies, and build myself a new reputation on the ruins of the character I have lost." "As you will," said Maitre Vogt. "You speak well, my son. You will be a fine lawyer one of these days." "The details are not many. pursued Obenreizer. "My troubles begin with the accidental death of my late travelling companion, my dear lost friend, Mr. Vendale." "Mr. Vendale," repeated the notary. "Just so. I have heard and read of the name several times within these 2 months. The name of the unfortunate English gentleman who was killed on the Simplon, when you got that scar upon your cheek and neck." "From my own knife," said Obenreizer, touching what must have been an ugly gash at the time of its infliction. "From your own knife," assented the notary, "and in trying to save him. Good, good, good. That was very good. Vendale, yes. I have several times lately thought it droll that I should once have had a client of that name." "But the world, sir," returned Obenreizer, "is so small." Nevertheless, he made a mental note that the notary had once had a client of that name. "As I was saying, sir, the death of that dear travelling comrade begins my troubles. What follows? I save myself. I go down to Milan. I am received with coldness by Defresnier and Company. Shortly afterwards, I am discharged by Defresnier and Company. Why? They give no reason why. I ask, do they assail my honour? No answer. I ask, what is the imputation against me? No answer. I ask, where are their proofs against me? No answer. I ask, what am I to think? The reply is, Monsieur Obenreizer is free to think what he will. What Monsieur Obenreizer thinks is of no importance to Defresnier and Company, and that is all." "Perfectly. That is all," asserted the notary, taking a large pinch of snuff. "But is that enough, sir?" "That is not enough," said Maitre Voigt. "The house of Defresnier are my fellow townsmen, much respected, much esteemed. But the house of Defresnier must not silently destroy a man's character. You can rebut assertion, but how can you rebut silence?" "Your sense of justice, my dear patron," answered Obenreizer, "states in a word the cruelty of the case. Does it stop there? No, for what follows upon that?" "True, my poor boy," said the notary, with a comforting nod or two. "Your ward rebels upon that." "Rebels is too soft a word," retorted Obenreizer. "My ward revolts from me with horror. My ward defies me. My ward withdraws herself from my authority, and takes shelter, Madame Dor with her, in the house of that English lawyer, Mr. Bintrey, who replies to your summons to her to submit herself to my authority, that she will not do so." "And who afterwards writes," said the notary, moving his large snuff box to look among the papers underneath it for the letter, "that he is coming to confer with me." "Indeed?" replied Obenreizer, rather checked. "Well, sir, have I no legal rights?" "Assuredly, my poor boy," returned the notary. "All but felons have their legal rights." "And who calls me felon?" said Obenreizer, fiercely. "No one. Be calm under your wrongs. If the house of Defresnier would call you felon, indeed we should know how to deal with them." While saying these words, he had handed Bintrey's very short letter to Obenreizer, who now read it and gave it back. "In saying," observed Obenreizer, with recovered composure, "that he is coming to confer with you, this English lawyer means that he is coming to deny my authority over my ward." "You think so?" "I am sure of it. I know him. He is obstinate and contentious. You will tell me, my dear sir, whether my authority is unassailable until my ward is of age." "Absolutely unassailable.